stress, burnout, even suicide. The practice of law can be so stressful that people literally end up sacrificing their lives for it. If you love being a lawyer or any other similar type of professional, but the way it's practiced is killing you, a solution is here. Keep watching and you'll find out what it is. In the meantime, press the subscribe button, put down your phone, and learn some tips that can change the entire trajectory of your career and your legacy itself. We're back here at the 𝗕𝗫𝗆𝗍 Cafe, and today's conversation is going to be fun, deep, meaningful, and transformative all at once. How do I know that? Because Jen Gillman is in the house. Jen, welcome to the 𝗕𝗫𝗆𝗍 Cafe.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here, Scott.
I am so happy to, and I know the audience is going to be happy that you stopped by as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Themis, the Greek goddess of justice, of law, and righteousness, and even in a very primal way, wisdom. Themis was one of the earliest generations of goddesses. She predated the Olympians, the group of gods and goddesses that we most commonly associate with characters like Zeus or Hera or Apollo. She was primordial, and she was the mother of the three fates. She was known to have a deep connection with prophecy and an understanding of intuition and the inner knowledge about who and what we are, what we become, and what we need to be. And that all was intimately tied into her function with regards to what we mentioned a couple seconds ago, justice, law, doing the right thing. And so it's no surprise that Jen, who is herself a lawyer and a guide for lawyers who are going through crises that may require them to speak to an inner oracle, share with us a little bit about exactly why Themis resonates with you.
Sure. So I was always very drawn to law. I think in my autograph book in second grade, the teacher wrote, "You're going to be such a great lawyer someday." Everybody knew I was going to law school. I was so excited about it. I love the law, the whole idea of having a legal system. And I really did love it while I was still practicing. Although we can maybe talk about later, I wasn't able to, be a mom to my children and still practice full time. So I found something else to do. But I've come across so many lawyers who are really just trying to do the right thing every day. They really love justice and the rule of law, and they're really just trying to represent their clients, whether they're talking about, the underserved populations or corporations that can hire the best attorneys that they can. The lawyers themselves do it for kind of the love of the game. And I can hear in their voices a lot of times how disappointed they are by how the day-to-day has become, because they had such an idea of why they wanted to be lawyers, and the work is still interesting to them and they're still drawn to it. But there are a lot of things about the schedule and the pressures and some other parts of the profession that probably send them more toward you to leave the law than toward me to talk about maybe there's another firm where they could realize their vision.
It goes right back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, which perhaps is an interesting starting place for the meat of this discussion. Themis as the mother of the three fates. The three fates were Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Clotho represented the spinning of life. Lachesis represented the lifespan and what occurred within our lives. Atropos cut the thread and ended life. If you are someone who comes from Themis, someone who has been interested your entire life in being a lawyer, the fate that you end up with may not be what you expected it to be, particularly as you're hinting at vis-a-vis your professional life. And one of the alarming things maybe we could start to talk about a little bit is the role of 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝑠, the one who cuts the cord of life upon those whose life ends up being dramatically different than they might have hoped and dreamed for. Just intentions notwithstanding.
Yes, I think law calls a lot of people who were straight A students, who worked as hard as they could, who polished up that book report before they handed it in fourth grade and did the extra research on their seventh grade paper and took all the honors and AP classes they could all the way through high school and got into the best college they could and did as well as possible and got into the best law school. And they're used to getting a lot of gold stars for their efforts. And then they get to be first year associates at the biggest and best firms across the country. And no one ever says thank you. And no one ever says good job. They may work overnight, 3 or 4 nights in a row, and get yelled at because they missed a comma in a 400-page document. I mean, there are so many stories I've heard over the years. And they just go from being complimented all the time and getting a lot of positive feedback all the way through school to sometimes this is their first real job. And you can never do anything right because law school doesn't actually teach you that much about practicing law. And so this is maybe the first time in their lives that they're failing all the time. And some of the partners and more senior lawyers they're working with are not warm and fuzzy and are not trying to help them. you know, hey, when you put that comma there, that was the wrong spot, and here's why. But I know you'll do a better job next time. Thanks for your effort. They're saying, you stupid idiot, I can't believe you put the comma there. And after hearing that a lot of times, sometimes lawyers start to really feel down on themselves. The way we've set up that we bill by the hour, so however many hours you can work is prized, and availability is prized because the best law schools cost a lot of money, and a lot of the students borrow money to go there, and then they're encouraged to go to large law firms that pay very well so they can pay back the money they borrowed. And those firms are very well thought of, and it's a good place to start. Oh, if you have, a top 10 firm on your resume, you could always go somewhere else if that's not what you want. But they sort of get sucked in. And I know that in warfare, sometimes people use sleep deprivation as a weapon.
Yeah.
It feels like that's what's happening to a lot of these lawyers. And so unfortunately, and we can dig into it a little bit more, a lot of them have a shorter lifespan than would have been expected before they decided to enter the legal profession. There is an incredibly high suicide rate, and the people who don't get involved in that are sometimes involved in substance abuse and alcoholism. And the lawyers who escape from having those sort of mental health issues often have physical health issues because they go decades without sleeping a regular night's sleep. They give up eating healthy food and eat chips from the vending machine or whatever fast food can be delivered. And they're not exercising. They just don't have time for anything but work. And often you read a tragic story about a very promising lawyer in his 40s who has a fatal heart attack in the middle of the office. And that's just tragic that really hardworking people who truly love their jobs can't find a way to be successful at the thing they're willing to give a really big effort to.
Jen, we started off this leg of the conversation by talking about the thread of the 3 fates and what can happen within that thread of life, as well as the cutting of the cord of life. And by pushing that theme of threads into where you did, interestingly enough, a whole new ball of yarn emerged that could take us in a lot of different directions. So I'm going to take us initially into one direction, but try and sweep us back to another, unless you continue to intrigue us with all of these other little factoids and thought bombs here. So you talked initially about the culture of law firms and these people that are smart, that get into great law schools and then pass the bar, which is itself an accomplishment. Oh my God, passing the bar was a nightmare for me. I mean, I did it the first time, but like I lost so much sleep and had so much anxiety along the way. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. And when I talk to people about it, they say, well, can it really be that bad, Scott? Is it really that awful? Or are you lawyers all just being overly dramatic? I mean, we know you like to get up there and put on a show in front of a jury. How do we know that you're not just exaggerating the awfulness of it and you are making, $250,000 a year, sometimes at a very early point in your career and on up? Sort of going back to what you said, just to personalize this a little bit. For instance, I will never forget at one point midway through my practicing years, after many, many weeks of working the sorts of hours that you described, I was in the office for a 7 a.m. meeting after having been there late the night before. And after the 7 a.m. meeting, I went to get some breakfast. And I took an elevator down to cross the street to a little diner across the street where they had omelets. And as I was crossing the street, I looked to my right and there was one of those little coffee stands that are on sidewalk corners. And I saw the man inside the coffee stand smiling as he handed someone on the street a 50-cent cup of coffee. And Jen, I was so angry. I hated that man. How dare he smile and like his life? You're saying you hear stories like that all the time. You don't, we're not exaggerating?
I hear stories like that all the time. And I also hear stories that are a little sad on that theme too. I was crossing the street to go and get breakfast and I wished a car had hit me, because if I had gone to the hospital, they would have given me the day off.
Oh my God.
I've heard people say that. I would have gotten to rest. I would have gotten to sleep. I would have gotten to have someone else assigned to that terrible partner that was, really hard to work with. So, I mean, I understand that lawyers work indoors and they make enough money to pay for groceries, and it might seem glamorous. And people say to me, oh, well, imagine if they work for minimum wage in a factory. Well, that could also be bad. It doesn't mean that being a lawyer isn't hard just because another job is hard. Lawyers have an extraordinarily high rate of suicide. They are 22 times more likely to commit suicide when under stress. But when you ask the second question, when you ask lawyers how often are you under stress, almost 100% of them will say every day. So that just means that they're 22 times more likely to commit suicide. And when they do a lot of questioning, a lot of times bar association groups do questioning about drinking, there are very, very, very big percentages of lawyers that will admit to being problem drinkers. And that's just the people who answered the questions, the ones that felt comfortable saying that they were problem drinkers. I understand it, because if you're working 12 hours and you have 1 hour to go home and relax, and then you have to go to get a few hours of sleep and get to that 7 a.m. meeting, there are very healthy ways to relax. You could do yoga, you could meditate, you could read, you could talk to somebody. They all take time. You could also drink a glass of wine in 5 minutes and enjoy 55 minutes of that hour. And I think a lot of lawyers opt for that. And the problems come when one glass of wine isn't enough anymore. And then it's one bottle. And then it's needing something to wake up in the morning and something to fall asleep at night. When I was a young lawyer, they used to tell stories about how they would give lawyers cocaine so they could work more on M&A deals. I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but I know about all the lawyers who take Adderall now. They take their kids' prescriptions, they get off-label Adderall because it's the only way they can concentrate for so many hours when they're so tired and details are so important. So it's really sad to me that there are lawyers who are burning out in such numbers, and even though they love law, they have to leave the profession and find something else to do. And the ones who try to make it work often have these terrible mental and physical health issues. And that's putting aside that lawyers don't have time to take care of their own personal health
Yeah.
when they need physical therapy because they hurt their shoulder, or they're supposed to go for an EKG that their doctor ordered, or they haven't seen the dentist in 5 years, or, there are a lot of terrible, terrible things. And if you don't keep up with those diagnostic tests or any of those well visits, sometimes there are things that the doctor could have found.
Keeping it real, you have triggered some things that I have never shared before outside of the confines of my own apartment. For instance, just to validate what you said, I started my career in litigation, and I remember I got an order to show cause one Friday night around 5:30 p.m. An order to show cause, for those of you who don't know, is basically a set of legal papers that you get that require you to be in court, usually 9 a.m. the next business day, to argue a issue that requires some sort of emergency resolution. And then the judge makes a decision as to whether an action should happen or usually be stopped literally on the spot that morning or very, very shortly afterwards. And so you have to walk in sometimes, again, not knowing that this issue is out there until after business hours, research it, write a response, it better be perfect, and then be prepared to argue it the next morning, irrespective of what your personal needs are or what your family or your health or anything like that. One time I got such an order to show cause, and it came just as I described after business hours. I ended up having to work the entire night. I got it on a Friday, so I went home Saturday, maybe around 1 o'clock the next day, having literally worked over the entire night, slept for about an hour, then went back into the office to work the rest of the weekend to prepare for that oral argument 9 a.m. Monday morning. And I'll tell you, Jennifer, I slept because I was so tired. I slept on my left arm wrong, and I woke up with this whole screw up in my arm so that it wouldn't move right, and it hurt for a long time, and I couldn't exercise it. That was 30 years ago, and that arm still is not normal to this day after that. And not only that, on the suicide rate, there was an attorney who was a part-time a hearing officer at an organization that I worked for. He also had his own private practice, and his last act, I liked him so much, Jen. It just pains me even thinking about this. His last act was opening the window in his solo practice office and throwing out every single piece of paper and all of his files onto the street, and then jumping to the street, following it. Every word you're saying is true. And yes, I mean, look, I'm just going to break it out. I think that you're talking about these medical diagnoses and things not getting taken care of. You have some personal experience there?
I do. I went to see a doctor and was told, hey, you're 50. You have to have a colonoscopy this year. And I made an appointment months and months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes to the week of the colonoscopy, and no one's ever looking forward to that, right? It's probably going to be unpleasant. But I am about to close a deal. I'm working with a lawyer who is very, very interested in going to a particular firm. And we've been told to expect an offer from that firm. And he already has an offer from another firm that's his second choice. But he is very interested in the firm that hasn't yet made the offer. And time is getting tight. And he's feeling a lot of stress. And the other firm says, we'll give you one more week until Monday, and you have to give us your answer. And I'm told, oh, don't worry, we're definitely going to get the final offer to you by Tuesday or Wednesday. So we figure, okay, well, we'll get it by Wednesday. He'll have, Thursday and Friday to talk with the firm about any of the points he doesn't understand. Over the weekend, he can make his decision. It should be fine by Monday. I have my colonoscopy scheduled for Friday afternoon. So I'm going to have to do prep starting on Thursday afternoon. Shouldn't be any problem because we're getting this offer Tuesday or Wednesday. And then everything gets delayed. There was probably some partner that was out of the office or something happened. Somebody was more important. Who even knows? And I happened to be talking to my mom on the phone, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to move that test that I scheduled because I really want to help this candidate. I know how much he wants to go to this firm, and I can't be under anesthetic when he calls or when we get the offer. I mean, I have to be there for him. This is his big life choice he's making. I have to get this done. And we don't have any family history there. I don't have colon cancer. I mean, I'll just do it another time. And she mentioned, because it was a few years ago now, after COVID, there was a big backlog of people doing diagnostic tests that they hadn't done during the shutdown and during when COVID was a factor. You didn't want to be in a medical setting if you didn't have to be. And she said, oh gosh, you're not going to be able to get an appointment probably for another year. You made this appointment 6 months ago. Like you're not going to be able to just reschedule for next week. You better just go ahead and do it. If your doctor said to do it, you should be careful. You should. And I would like to say that I listened to her sage advice, but probably I just ran out of time to call the doctor's office because I was busy. And
Keeping it real.
my mom is very smart, and I should listen to her.
The
I
spirit
think
of
after
Themis.
that conversation, I probably still have my doubts, but I was busy with other stuff, and I didn't call the doctor's office. So then it's time to do the prep or whatever, and the prep upset my stomach, and I ended up throwing up a lot of times. And I was very dehydrated, but it was past the time I was allowed to have any water because it was near the time for the test. So I was like dizzy and dehydrated and not feeling well. And I called the doctor's office to make sure that I could still do the test because I didn't know, I had never had it before. I'm like, I think I threw up most of the prep. Is that okay? And they said, just sit calmly somewhere where you can't fall down until somebody's at home with you, because apparently sometimes people fall down and give themselves a concussion or break an arm or something. So I'm like, okay. And that's when we got the offer from the firm. So I was texting with my candidate and emailing with the firm while I was lying down trying not to fall and give myself a concussion. And then the candidate called me and I had to talk to him because I didn't want him to feel like he wasn't fully supported. I didn't want him to feel like, oh, I have this medical test, so I'm ignoring you. I was like, hey, how are you? And then my husband comes to drive me to the hospital to have the test. And at some point, they put you under general anesthetic. The entire time before that, my thumbs are going on my phone. I'm doing.
My God.
And you know what? We got that offer done. It had all the things that he wanted in it. He wound up accepting it, and he's been there for years. And I had colon cancer.
Oh,
It's pretty good that I went that day. I was really lucky, and I had stage 1 colon cancer. So I had surgery, and that was the only treatment that I needed. That was 2 years ago, and I've been cancer-free the whole time.
God.
But if I had waited another year, the outcome could have been different, or at least the treatment would have been a lot more invasive than just surgery. So I was pretty lucky. If I had been a law firm associate or even a service partner or a Rainmaker who was worried about a particular client, I might have put it off. I always tell the lawyers that I work with that if your client is going to be that mad that you're away from the office for 2 hours to have a mammogram, go through it with the client about how it's going to be when you need 6 months off to treat your metastasized breast cancer, or how annoying it's going to be when they have to get another lawyer up to speed because you died. And then ask them if 2 hours is okay or not. Most of your clients don't want you to die. They really, really don't. They just want what they want at 11 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock. And if they know what the alternatives are, usually they can wait a couple hours.
The fact that people have to be coached to have that conversation, and that conversation even occurs, okay, we're going to get to that in a minute. I just have to share one last story because these stories are horrifying but entertaining. On 9/11, someone went into her law firm in the World Trade Center to do a deposition. And when the first plane hit the other tower, she had been there during an earlier attack on the World Trade Center, so she immediately left. And do you know, yes, I saw that look on your face, Jen. Yes, her boss did say, you better get those files and go and have that deposition. I don't want you walking out of this office. Now, this attorney basically said, F you, and left anyway. But of course, within no time at all, that entire office that she had just been in crumbled to the ground. This stuff is reality. It's dramatic and it's horrifying. You mentioned earlier, Jen, that a lot of times people that are lawyers are vulnerable to these sorts of pressures because they have achieved by performing. I think you said getting gold stars and straight A's and all of those sorts of things. They've never really screwed up in their life before. And so they end up in these massive law firms or in these high pressure government or prosecutorial positions. And then suddenly they're facing the boss or bosses from hell and they fall apart. Is it a matter of, when it comes to the underlying causes of these breaks, that the success that many of these attorneys have had earlier in their lives has put them in a position where they aren't resilient? Or is it really that there's something about the culture of the law, particularly law firms itself, that breeds these Medusa, Hydra, Greek monster-like beasts that rise the innocent citizens of the ancient Acropolises?
I think, Scott, that it's a combination. I think that some of these people who are used to getting gold stars, who are used to, if I got an A minus on the last test, I'll study 2 hours longer and I'll get an A on the next one. If I got an A and my friend got an A plus, I'll make sure I study a whole day longer so I'm never the one that doesn't get the A plus. I mean, there are people who from birth felt like that or were maybe pushed by families who wanted high achievements. And so they sort of come to the nuisance. But the atmosphere that is created by a system where being available all the time is something that you have to do. So you may have just worked a 15-hour day and you go home to finally take a nap and you get woken up by a phone call. We need that document right now. Well, I was just, I was in the office overnight and, it just, a lot of the lawyers I speak to say that they never feel like they can relax and unplug because especially at the bigger firms that have higher profile clients that charge more money per hour, they're trying to distinguish themselves from the smaller firms by saying that they give a higher degree of service. So that means if I call you at 9 o'clock at night, because I am the GC of the big client, and I say, I was just thinking, I'm kind of curious about what would happen if this isn't an emergency. I was just thinking about it and I was a little bit curious. But if you are the relationship partner, you say, oh my gosh, Jen, okay, yes, this sounds like this is very important. I'm going to get the whole team together. We're going to stay up all night until we solve this question for you. We'll call you first thing in the morning with the answer. All right, you go to sleep now. If you're at a smaller firm, sometimes it's a little different. Yeah. Sometimes they say, yeah, that's an interesting question. Tomorrow when we have our team meeting, we'll talk about it and we'll get back to you with some alternative ways we might attack that question you have. And everybody is going to go home. But even at the smaller firms, the way that lawyers get paid is by putting in time,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning before they have their own clients.
Yeah.
They bill an hour and they get paid for it. So being available all the time to look like you're giving good client and partner service, and being willing to give up anything else in your life to just keep billing more time is very important. And there are a lot of people, and it seems odd to me. I think it's like that in medicine too. The
Hmm.
ones that went through really horrible things think the next generation should also have to live through that too. So you hear all the time about how residents are on like 36 or 48-hour shifts,
Yeah.
and it's very bad and it causes mistakes, but every time they try to fix it, there's some older doctor who says, well, I had to do that when I was being trained. They should have to do
Yeah.
that too. So all of this, like, oh, we have to bill this many hours, or you never get to leave until the most senior partner has left for the day, or you should always be the last one in the office because you're the most junior, or you have to answer every email within 5 minutes. So you better keep your phone next to your bed and set an alarm to wake you up every hour and make sure you didn't get any emails. I mean, there are some serious, terrible things going on. And I think the combination of having the perfectionist achiever personality and being in this law firm environment is volatile. So the first time we all really thought about these issues was the letter that was called Big Law Killed My Husband, written by the surviving spouse of a very well-known bankruptcy Chapter 11 partner. He had been part of a bigger team. Some people had retired, some people had left, and then they put him in charge of the team, which was
Hmm.
a great honor. He had made it. He was at a really big firm in one of the best bankruptcy groups in the whole city, and now he was in charge. And they said he was such a good supervisor and mentor, and he always had a joke for everyone, and he was,
Yeah.
it was a lot of work, but he was so pleasant, and he just kept losing more team members and getting more work. And I mean, I'm shortening the story, but it came down to he was working on two really big Chapter 11 filings at the same time, and it wasn't physically possible to meet the deadlines in both of them. So he was thinking of which judge he could ask for a couple of extra days. And in his mind, that was such a failure to ask for more time, to not be able to meet a deadline as a law firm partner, that his solution was to kill himself in the parking garage instead.
Oh,
And when that happened, all of the lawyers and all of the bar associations and all of the law firms mobilized to say, oh my gosh, this is horrific. We can't let things like this happen. We have to have mental health and wellness training. We have to make support services available. We have to make sure no suicide ever happens again. And they created some organizations that are good and some
mhm.
programming that's good. And the stats haven't gotten any better. It's tragic. It really is. Just last year, there was a female M&A partner in the UK who had been involved in selling a professional soccer team, although there I think it's football team. And she was this high flying equity partner, had a lot of big clients, was really valued at her firm. And later, after her death, they said, well, she had been doing so well. She went 6 months or more working 18-hour days and she never complained. She always acted like everything was under control. She had two young daughters and a husband that she wasn't seeing.
Oh,
And she went to they had a dinner to celebrate the end of the deal. She went to the dinner and it was either on the way home or the next morning when she was on the way home, she stepped in front of a train. And they thought at first, oh, well, maybe she had too many drinks and she fell down. But then they saw that she had called suicide hotlines and she had
oh,
called uh, she had some problem drinking behaviors
mhm.
going on, and clearly that was ruled. It was actually ruled by whatever government entity looked into it to have been a suicide. And they just published an article, it must have been very recent, that it was the year anniversary of her death. And they were looking back to see if anything had changed, and nothing really has. And now the first year salaries keep going up and
Yeah.
the expectations keep going up. I bet a lot of those first year associates who are making $225,000 a year just to start without really being able to be a lawyer, they would probably give up some of that money if they could sleep sometimes, if they could be treated a little nicer, if they could see their friends and family sometimes.
Some people would argue back, well, boo-hoo, that's sad, but they're the ones working for these glamorous law firms. If they were smart enough to get those jobs, couldn't they have done this thing called put together a resume and go somewhere else? Couldn't they have switched careers? Couldn't they have gone and made less than $500,000 a year, maybe settled, for 150,000 and gone on with their lives? I found that a lot of attorneys I know that work in big law in particular almost, again, it sort of goes to, at least to my eyes, but I'm very curious as to your thoughts, into the success A+ syndrome. Fortunately, I've got to say, I was never that person who would kill myself to get A+. I was damn happy to get that A-. I just shut up and took what I could. But, I didn't go into a law firm initially because I was just like, that I did a summer internship there. The whole thing it was too corporate. It was too boring. It didn't appeal to me. But people did look down on me. Not all of them, but a lot of them were sort of seemed to assume, oh, Scott, you couldn't have gotten a job at a huge law firm. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. Never even occurred to them that I might actually want to do what I was doing. Which was odd. Right. But it goes as to this mentality people can have. Is that something you see? And is there a way to even shift yourself out of that if you have come to buy into the Kool-Aid that the only place to work and be a success as a lawyer is as a practice group head at the 5th largest law firm? I'm not picking on the 5th largest law firm in the world. I don't even know what it is. But at some glamorous, quote unquote, glamorous firm in a high tower somewhere? Or what's the deal there?
Yeah, Scott, I don't disagree with you. There is definitely a mentality, especially the students that are coming out of those really good schools.
Yeah.
The schools want their stats to look good. We
Yeah.
graduated this many
That's
students,
true.
and this percentage
Yeah.
went to the top law firms in the city or in the world or whatever it is. And some of it is also the cost of going to law school has gone up astronomically. And these students are graduating with debt that's much higher than that
Yeah,
$225,000 a
that's
year
true.
salary. So it sounds really high, but they're using a lot of it to pay off the debt they took on to go to school in the beginning. But there is, I remember when I was still practicing, I eventually became a management side labor and employment lawyer, and I really loved it. I really did. And people would suggest, well, maybe you would really like in-house practice because most in-house legal departments have a labor and employment attorney because that's sort of like the personnel and HR matters that happen at a firm,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
most companies have those things happen. And I remember thinking at the time like that was signaling failure.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't make it at a law firm, so I would go and do something else.
Wow.
And so that's part of it. Part of it is people tend to feel stuck the longer they stick around. Some of the law firms, it's sort of like golden handcuffs. They give out some bonuses, but you have to stay this long to get it, and then you only get this part. And so people are sticking around because I already worked this many hours. I might as well get the bonus. So they're not paying it then, they're paying it later. And so they stick around a little longer. And sometimes it's a little more subtle. I find that even at the law firms where I worked, which weren't the top of the top, there was a lifestyle creep. The partners that made a lot of money would suggest, oh, maybe you'd like to try this restaurant or that vacation. People felt like they had to keep up with how they dressed and what kind of shoes they wore, whether they had a nice watch on or whether their briefcase looked nice enough to go to court and things like that. And so some of them got caught up in some more expensive things, and maybe they didn't pay back their loans as fast as they could have if they lived on macaroni and cheese from the
Right.
box or
Right.
something.
Right.
And so they got stuck in needing to earn a little bit more. And there is something to be said for practicing at that higher level with really smart people. And it's usually not abusive 24/7, or people would leave, right? It
No.
gets better and worse. And you think, oh, it's good, and then it's bad. And then you think, oh, it's okay. And I find, I work with, we call them rainmakers. It's usually partners, but it could be other lawyers who have their own clients. And that gives them a certain amount of leverage and power over their careers because they could leave. There are a lot of firms that would want to hire them, or they could hang out a shingle and start their own firm because they have their own clients. But yet a lot of them really feel stuck too. So it's very sad sometimes.
That lifestyle creep thing, by the way, I experienced between my first and second year in law school. I did my big law internship stint, which I quickly discovered that wasn't a myth slayer sort of thing to do. And one of the things I did that got comment, I heard, was I did one of two things. I walked to work, or I drove like a cheap little subcompact car. Right. It wasn't even, I just got the cheapest thing I could find. It was little, it was just me. And I was told that that was not a good look for me. So I hear what you have to say about that and how that can impact people if you don't have a strong sense of identity, a deep core. Now, people come to you with these issues, but please tell me, Jen, you have to have a solution. You just can't throw them out to the water and say, hey, nice knowing you, your life sucks, bye.
Well, yeah, I do have a solution, and I've developed it over many years of being a recruiter, and I think that it really does work. So I'm really excited. I'm actually writing a book, which is hopefully going to come out January 2026. That will tell it as a story for everyone like me who doesn't like to read nonfiction, but generally. It's called The 6 Pillars of Becoming a Happy Rainmaker. And it's only for people who actually like practicing law and like practicing law in private practice at some form of law firm, whether it's on their own or at a big firm or somewhere in between. So the ones that really find that law is not for them and they want to do something else with that degree, I send them to you.
Which is why we're best friends.
There's this guy, Scott Mason. He can help you out with that.
Yeah,
But
and it's exactly the same, right? Like, what do I do with people? They've got to go to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my superpower is I tell people it takes me 15 minutes or less to hear whether they want to be a lawyer and the problem they have can be solved by being at a different law firm.
Yeah.
I lie about that. It really takes me about 5 minutes or less.
Oh, really?
It's really, really easy to tell when somebody is just stuck in the circumstances. But look, it really comes through very quickly whether somebody loves the law or doesn't. So the ones that, look up to Themis and still love the law and love the idea of having a system of laws and want to participate and want to represent their clients, whether they're transactional or litigation, and they light up when they talk about how it used to be better. Oh, that one time I did this thing, it was so great. Or before they changed managing partners, it was like this, or whatever it is. And you see the light. And once I see that, and then they have to be realistic. So generally, and I can't say for everyone, I suppose if you had $100 million book of business, you could get whatever you wanted. But for regular rainmakers who have, some millions of dollars, no one's going to buy you a private helicopter and ferry you back and forth to the office and build a helipad on the roof of the building for you. And you can't work on Thursdays from 10 to 11 and get paid $10 million a year. You have to probably work more days than that. And, there are certain things that you have to be realistic about. But generally, if lawyers will look out for themselves and treat their practice as if it's a miniature law firm within the law firm that they're employed by, they can figure out a way to have enough leverage and power that the firm wants them to be happy and would like them to stay and is responsive to the things they ask for. But if it doesn't work out and they're not able to get what they need at that firm, they're very highly sought after if they want to go somewhere else or open their own practice. So we I came up with this when I was trying to think of all the things that I give as advice and all the topics I care about and how they all fit together. And it was actually because I was sick. I had I caught RSV, and usually I work anyway, but I felt really terrible for almost a week. I watched a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, and
Oh,
I
you must have
read a
been
lot
sick.
of like, you know, trashy like romance novel kind of things. Usually I try when I'm reading, it's always I'm a little behind. I was an English major. I didn't
Right.
know I was going to be a business owner. So I'm always trying to read about marketing or
Yeah.
mindset or business or something else. And I was reading, Bridget Jones's Diary spin-offs and the really crazy stuff. And it gave my mind a rest.
Mhm.
And I really do think that lawyers are better lawyers when they have a rest to create some creativity. So that's the first pillar is care for yourself. We
Mhm.
always say you have to be alive to do the other pillars, so you have to care for yourself. And I say that lawyers should think of themselves like Olympic athletes. So, in order to be able to perform at your highest level, to give the best legal advice, to make the best analysis for your client, you have to sleep some hours every night would be optimal, and a full 7 or 8 hours a lot of nights would be much better. You have to eat healthy food when it's possible. I get it. You're working all night and there's a vending machine and that's the only available
Yeah.
option. That's probably not the night you're having a salad, but there are a lot of times where you have a choice of what you're going to eat.
Yeah.
Lawyers have money. They can have meals delivered to the office. They can have meals prepared for them. They can have groceries delivered.
No.
They can optimize they don't have time, but they can pay for some more convenience. And you have to get some movement. So whether you can engage a personal trainer that comes to your office and works out with you for a half hour, whether you can join a gym and have an accountability buddy that meets you there, whether you can just park a little further away from the door or
Mm.
get off the elevator one floor below and walk up one flight of stairs or get your document off the printer and not wait for your assistant to bring it to you. I mean, there
Mm.
are ways to get a little bit of activity. And we always say that it's probably not the night before the biggest trial of your career that you're going to get 8 hours of sleep and
Yeah.
eat an organic vegetable filled meal, and
Yeah.
you're probably not going to get a 2 hour workout that night.
Yeah.
But there are times, even in a really busy lawyer's life, where it's possible to get a little more sleep, to get a little more exercise, to eat some more food. And I would like to see everybody take care of their health in a proactive way because when I give my example of how I found colon cancer early and thankfully recovered fully, I hear back a lot of other examples all the time.
Mm.
And there are a lot of really great outcomes that come from having that well visit, getting your teeth cleaned, going for that
Mm.
mammogram, whatever it is that your doctor is recommending. Usually they can prevent something from happening or catch it early. And that really does help. When you hurt your arm, if you had been able to go for physical therapy right away
Yeah.
and you had been, at a doctor and you had been doing exercises, maybe it would have been a short-term injury instead of a long-term injury.
You're absolutely right.
So then the next thing that we say after care for yourself, because we've got you alive and you're treating yourself like an Olympic athlete, is build business. Because until you have your own clients, the only way that you add value to a law firm is by working a lot of hours or always being available. If you start to shift that equation and you bring in the client work that is feeding other people, then your personal hours become a lot less relevant. So you can do, 200 more hours, or you could bring in this really big client that gives everybody 200 more hours. The firm stops looking at how many hours you're billing and doesn't expect you to be quite so available when you're creating revenue from that other source. And if you are creating those relationships and bringing in clients, we all say, all lawyers are created equal at the firm, except the ones that have the biggest books of business are a little more equal than everyone else. The firm is going to be a little more responsive when you say, I need some more associate help. I need this piece of tech. I would like to go to this conference. I need something. I'm going to be out every Thursday because I coach Little League. I'm going to be out every Tuesday because I'm having that physical therapy on my arm. Whatever it is, they're a lot more responsive and happier to hear from you when you're contributing to their bottom line with clients. And so we always tell associates from the first day of practice, you should be setting aside a little time. And it's hard at first because you're so busy and people are yelling at you and you're so tired. It's really hard to find time for that. And you might even get discouraged from doing it by your firm. Oh, yeah, what are you going to bring in the pizza place on the corner? We represent Blackstone. We don't need that. But it's an investment in your future. So you have to think of it as investment time. And I tell everybody that the small things make a really big difference. So if you can carve out 20 minutes a week, and even just most weeks, some weeks you're in court in the middle of a trial and you can't do that 20 minutes. But some weeks you can call your buddy from law school just to say hello or get together for coffee, or you can find a conference to attend, or you can come up with a topic for an article you're going to write, or you can post on LinkedIn, or you can speak to the person at your level at a client and get to know them really well. So when they leave and go to another client, maybe they give you some work. You can keep in touch with the people in your network and develop some new relationships. And there are a lot of things you can do in 20 minutes. And when you have a little bit more time, maybe you go to a networking event, or you actually attend the conference, or you sit down and you write the article. But doing some really small things every week over a year builds up like compound interest.
And Jen, before you move on to the next point, I want to really underscore that in my space, the people that you may have sent in my direction, some of them want to be entrepreneurs or artists or something where they're going to have to get their own business, so they get that. Others want to move into completely different fields, but they may want to work in an office. Let's say they want to run a program at a nonprofit or something like that. And they think that then the advice that you're giving them or that you would give them isn't necessarily true. And many of them are shocked when I say to them, by the way, you can get that other job in that other area, in that place that you like, and you need to make sure that you always have some sort of side hustle going on, no matter what. Because if you can sell, you will not starve. Doge let go of hundreds of thousands of people who didn't have side hustles and anywhere to go, not to mention other massive layoffs. You're never safe. You're never safe. That investment that you're talking about is applicable to anyone. But I want you to get into your next pillar, but just quickly, well, what if you are an attorney who is so tied to the spirit of Themis that your joy is simply in writing the briefs and you can't imagine yourself out there meeting people and bringing in business?
Well, I wish somebody had told this to me when I was graduating from law school.
Yeah.
There is a method of business development for every single lawyer out there, because not everyone has to be with the scotch and the cigar in the 5,000 person networking event, the center of attention, telling a story. That's not the only method of business development. If you love the law so much, but you're quiet and shy, maybe you want to write an article about the law. Maybe you want to start a blog about the law. Maybe you want to start posting on LinkedIn about something so that you can help those future clients. And it was actually told to me very recently by a guy who I believe is the foremost expert on attorney business development and compensation. His name is Blaine Prescott. He said that a lot of times people won't try something they're uncomfortable with, and they won't try it once, so they never find out that they're really good at it. He said that he's seen a lot of very introverted, shy people turn out to be the best speakers, like at conferences or on webinars or on panels, because they don't like speaking to individual people or being in a large group of people where they have to interact. But when they get to talk about the area of law that they love so much, that they're so passionate about, they are very animated and happen to give a very good talk. And a lot of times, if they would push themselves to try it once, they might like it. And I think that anytime you try and fail, you have to think of it as information. It's some data.
Yeah.
So you try to keep up with your law school friends, and so far no one's given you any work. Well, let's look at the information. Are any of them still lawyers? Are any of them in-house at corporations? Are they in a position where they can give out work? Maybe not yet, but if you keep in touch with them 5 more years, and that person's the general counsel, or the person you know from high school is the CEO, or that low level in-house counsel person that you were kind to, that you developed a relationship with, that you took out for coffee one time, is going to become more senior and may change companies and be in a position to give out work. I always tell, like, the people who are worried that they can't do it, that they're not rainmakers, they don't have that kind of personality, you can say they're probably much better listeners than people who are the life of the party, and they can hear what people really need and they can respond by helping. So if you're at a networking event and you hear somebody say they really need a college counselor for their high school student, maybe you could be the one who actually follows up with an email and the contact information instead of just saying a bunch of stuff and walking away. If you know somebody needs a travel agent or somebody to repave their driveway, it doesn't have to be a legal problem. You can just start developing a relationship by helping.
Mic drop. Mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. Jen, what is your next pillar? I'm not even going to try and respond to that.
So I would just want to say business development is extraordinarily important. And although care for yourself has to go first because you have to be alive to do business development, I think business development may be the most important pillar because it allows you to have control over your career forever. And it means that you can pick up your toys and go home anytime you don't like what's going on.
Yeah.
You can go to another firm. You can start your own firm.
Yep.
You can do whatever it is you want to do because you know how to attract clients.
Yep.
So that is very, very important. And if you feel like you may have let that go a little bit, if anybody's listening to this and they haven't really been doing a lot of business development activity, there are professional business development coaches out there. You can hire them yourself. Your firm can hire them to come talk with a group, or your firm may sponsor you to be sent for something. There's a lot of free stuff you can read. We have Happy Rainmakers videos that are 6 minutes each because we say point one can make a difference. And we have a whole bunch on business development you can watch while you're waiting for a partner to turn comments. So there's always something you can do, and it's never too late. Every business development coach I've ever spoken to says there is, as long as you're open to it, as long as you're willing to take some action, there is no lawyer they've ever spoken to who is incapable of doing business development.
Huge, because you do hear all the time one of two things, both of which you've addressed. Either, yeah, I'm an introvert, so I can't bring in business. A lie. A sad lie, but a lie nonetheless. And yeah, I'm too old. No one listened to me. Especially in law. Come on. When it comes to the law, people actually value experience. It's not like tech or being a Hollywood starlet where, oh, you're over 25, so you have no value anymore. It's quite the reverse. So yeah, what you're saying is true. What else can people do to help be in a position where they can reconnect with Themis? Because this is such practical, useful advice, and I feel like you've taken us sort of on an epic journey through an underworld, but back towards the light, back to reconnecting with the inner goddess that many lawyers have within us, as represented by Themis.
Well, once you have begun to develop your own business and you've shown your firm that you are able to bring value in a different way, then you can start setting boundaries and planning intentionally. That's pillar 3 and pillar 4. Set boundaries. I need the weekends with my family. I'm willing to work until 2 in the morning during the week, but I need some time off. I need to reconnect with my family. Or I don't mind working over the weekend, but I'm not a night person. I need to get into bed by 11 o'clock. And unless we have a filing due the next day, I'm going to stop for the night and come back tomorrow instead. Or set a boundary about something that you want to do. I remember when I was still practicing, I did not have my own clients because no one told me about the 6 pillars. And so I was valuable to my firm because of the hours I could bill and how available I was. I signed up to take an Italian class because I love Italy and I wanted to travel there again and I wanted to be able to speak the language better when I went. And it was at 8 o'clock on a Monday night and it was like 20 minutes from the office. And I thought since I usually worked every weekend, I was usually kind of ahead on Mondays because a lot of partners would say, I want that on my desk first thing on Monday morning. And then they wouldn't look at it until like Thursday. So I figured Monday night, that's safe. And 8 o'clock, I mean, that's not so early. I could probably leave the office by 7:40 on a Monday. And I made it to 2 classes. So So you have to set boundaries and live them. I really,
Yeah.
and once you have your own business, when you speak, it's just so much more important to the firm to hear from you than other people. So if you say, I coach Little League on Thursdays, I'm a Sabbath observer, I'm not available from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. I need to take my kids to school every morning and I'll be in at 10:30. Whatever it is, and unless there's a true emergency and you feel like you're willing to compromise, you should keep those boundaries so that the firm knows to expect that you're not available on Thursday nights because that's Little League coaching night and you're not going to do it. And that's it. And plan intentionally. My favorite thing to do with a group of lawyers is say, take out your calendar or your electronic calendar. Let's plan for the next year. Oh, well, it's not January 1st. We can't do that. Yeah, we can. We can plan for a year out because I want everybody to take a vacation. And it's really hard. Today is a Friday when we're taping this.
Yeah.
It would be very hard for me to take next week off
Yeah.
on the spur of the moment, right? Because I have a lot of things on my calendar that
Yeah.
I've committed to doing.
Yeah.
And I would make a lot of people very inconvenienced, and I wouldn't want to do that. But I could probably take a week off in August
Yeah.
because that's a lot of months away.
Yeah.
And I could plan around it and I could block it off on my calendar. And when I go to court, I could tell the judge, oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of town that week. Could we make it the week before, the week after? I remember I was so worried. I was in court scheduling something right before I got married, and the judge picked a time that was going to be during my honeymoon. And I'm like, oh God, I've heard stories about this. People are always having to reschedule their weddings. And I wasn't even at the biggest, nastiest firm, but I was like, all right, well, I hope that at least I can have the wedding and
Oh
maybe
my
we'll just
God.
reschedule the honeymoon. And I said, Your Honor, yes, Ms. Gillman. I'm gonna be out of town that day. Where are you gonna be? I'm gonna be in Europe. It's my honeymoon. And he was like, your honeymoon? Oh
Oh.
my gosh, congratulations. And the other lawyers, oh, it's your honeymoon. We're not. So I said, I'll be home this day. We can make it the next day. Oh no, you're not going to want to come home to have this motion the next morning. We'll move it out a couple. I mean, everyone was
Wow.
so nice about it. When you're giving birth, you should take some time off. When you're the dad and your wife gave birth or your partner gave birth, you should take some time off. I remember when I was still very junior, there were 3 female partners in the whole firm. One of them didn't have children and had never gotten married. One of them had children who were older by the time she was made partner. And one of them bragged that she had 3 children, but by the third one, she had gotten it down to only taking 1 day off. That's we
Wow.
shouldn't normalize that. We really, because when people take time off, they're apt to work better and more efficiently and more creatively and give better results to their clients. So let's look at our calendars. Let's plan a vacation. Let's plan for whatever school activities your kids have, if you have kids, whatever it is you really truly want to do, whether it's feeding the homeless or training for the
Yeah.
marathon or seeing your grandmother once a month or going to book club or whatever it is you love has to go on your calendar so that you plan around it. You're not going to just get lucky. If I don't put my Thursday night book club on my calendar, I'm not going to go because I'm always going to have something else to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You have to put that on, and then we have to work business development into it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? Are you going to join a networking group? Are you going to go to a conference? Are you going to do whatever kind of activity has, they have a schedule. You have to follow their schedule. So you have to put their schedule on your calendar. If the conference takes place in April, they're not going to move it to May for you because it's more convenient. You either have to go in April or you don't go,
Yeah.
right? And then the things that you're going to do for yourself have to go on the calendar too. So that 20 minutes, or maybe you get lucky, it's a
Mhm.
half hour of business development activity that you're going to do goes on your calendar like it's a real appointment. And then you have to decide what you're going to be doing for your health. Do you have any doctor's appointments or tests you have to schedule? Get them on the calendar in advance. Do you have a health goal? Have you not been getting any exercise and you'd like to try and get back to the gym and meet with a trainer twice a week? Would you like to go on a walk with your spouse once a week? Whatever
No.
it is, get it on your calendar. Get the school conference, the school play, whatever kid stuff, whatever friend stuff. Get it all on your calendar. You would be amazed at how easy it is to plan around things and how hard it is to find an empty space when you haven't planned at all.
Yeah. Right.
And the last two pillars are learn continuously and create a legacy. So learn continuously because just like Themis, we love the law. We want to keep abreast of all of the changes and ins and outs and every new reg and every new way of doing something because most of the lawyers I speak to just love it. But you also want to help your clients as much as possible so that you're relevant to them. So if
Mhm.
you're a corporate lawyer and you have clients that keep asking you about AI and how they can use it in their business, or whether there are any ethical issues, or whether there are privacy issues, I always tell lawyers you have to take CLE, continuing legal education credits, every year anyway. You should make those
Mm.
credits count.
Yeah.
You should choose courses, not because it's December 31st and you have 10 credits you have to get.
Which I've been guilty of. I admit.
Oh, take that day where you get all 10 credits in one day. I
Yeah.
don't care what it's about. Will you sign my paper? Okay.
Exactly. And make sure you bring your phone with you so you can be on it the whole time the lecturer is up there talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can take some AI classes, or
Mhm.
if you're a corporate M&A lawyer and you see that business is getting a little bit slow, you can pivot a little bit and
Mhm.
talk about how workouts and reorganizations are really like a reverse M&A. But you could probably do that a lot better if you took a couple of credits in bankruptcy and you understood
Mm.
how it worked. Or if you want to specialize a little, you're an M&A lawyer, but you really want to be in the energy space or in the
Mhm.
healthcare space or explore cannabis or whatever it is, make those CLE credits work for you. And then once you get a little bit of information, you can do some research on your own and write an article because your firm always wants you to
Yeah.
publicize them. Their name's going to be on the
Yeah.
article, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to a conference that's there and you write another article and you post on LinkedIn, and soon they're asking you to speak at the conference. And guess what? You're an expert in whatever it was you wanted to pick up. And when we say create a legacy, you are probably just as familiar as I am with those 87-year-old partners who don't want to give up their corner office,
Yeah.
even though they really aren't at the top of their legal practice right now, because sometimes they don't have anything else to do. A lot of them have ignored their life outside of the office for
Yeah.
so long that they don't have their health anymore. They're not gonna, go
Yeah.
on a worldwide cruise or hike
Yeah.
around the mountains or whatever. A lot of them don't have loved ones anymore. They're on their
Yeah.
third marriage. Their wife hates them. They just got
Yeah.
divorced again. Their kids haven't spoken to them in years.
Yeah.
We always say, if sometimes people are on the apology tour, they apologize all day to their clients for not being able to help them, all night to their family, but they don't have to apologize to their friends anymore because their friends stopped calling a long time
Oh,
ago. Most of those people don't have friends anymore because they either canceled at the last minute or said no to invitations, or they said yes finally and then stood in the corner on their phone or on their laptop the whole time.
yeah.
And their friends stopped inviting them. And so a lot of those people didn't develop hobbies because they spent their whole life on their career. They don't have loved ones in the picture. They don't have friends in the picture. They don't have a reason to retire. If they retired tomorrow, what would they do?
Die.
So there are actually a lot of experts that, especially since the baby boomer generation is the largest generation in a while, and a lot of them have not retired yet, even though they are quite a bit older than the usual retirement age. There are experts in having a meaningful retirement. So that is, leave a legacy, leave your practice on a high note so that you are
Yeah.
doing your best work and people remember that and the clients got the best advice from you, and then go off and do something that you find meaningful. There are experts who can help. What is it you love about your practice? Maybe you could teach a class or become a mentor or a mediator or an arbitrator, or maybe you can write a book. I actually know someone who had a wonderful labor and employment practice, and now he's in culinary school because he always wanted to be a really accomplished cook. He's not going to open a
Oh.
restaurant. He just wants to be a really great cook, and he has time and money now, so he's going to do it.
And I have a former boss who told me after she retired and was, gone from the profession for a couple of years, that she was going to school to study to be a veterinary assistant. Bravo to her.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling people when everybody said 65 was the right retirement age, no one was living to be 100. You
Yeah.
don't need 35 years of doing nothing.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of second and third acts now that
Yeah.
can be very meaningful to people, and they don't have to be paid. You could volunteer in a way that is really meaningful to you. You can, if you really love golf, take up golf, but you don't have to play golf just because you're retired. There are a lot of other things to do. I personally am trying to learn how to play golf now because I see it as a fun networking activity. You get to be outside chatting with people, and now I just have to learn how to hit the ball. But not everybody wants to play golf 7 days a week, so sometimes people need some other activities too.
There has been a lot that you have shared and a lot to take in. Thinking about how people's lives can change and thinking about the future and not just where we are at today. This last point about legacy and that 87-year-old in the corner office. I mentioned earlier what happens when people like that leave sometimes. When I worked for New York City government, they may not have been lawyers, but they were these longtime civil servants who had nothing going on in their lives but their job, and they would retire. And you could retire earlier working for the city of New York, but then they die 6 months later. It's the same thing. That without meaning, we don't live. And so thinking about that desire for a legacy in the context of your connection to Themis, if you are a lawyer that really feels that way, how can they somehow be interwoven so that the arc of your connection with Themis either closes appropriately or you're able to continue your relationship with her even after you're retired, and creating an additional legacy for yourself is something that's really powerful. Jen, if there is any final word that you would like to share with the audience that you haven't had a chance to so far, or a point that you have mentioned that you want to underscore, I would love to hear what that might be.
Well, I think we talked about a lot of negatives of private practice for lawyers, but there are a lot of positives. It is a really rewarding practice for
Yeah.
those who love it. And I really think that for those who identify with Themis and really love the law and enjoy being lawyers, there is a way to do it with some balance. So we call it having a sustainable, enjoyable practice over a lifetime. And whether that's at a law firm or you go ahead and do something else with it, there are ways to get happier. If it's not practicing law that's getting you down, then there are ways to practice law in a different way. And if you no longer enjoy practicing law, I think you should talk to my friend Scott Mason.
But make no mistake, absolutely. Like, as with you, I can tell quickly whether someone is the right client for me or not, because if they don't feel that call, if they're not really feeling like, oh, I'm meant to do something different, or this just isn't fundamentally fitting for me, then the chances are they were meant to be a lawyer, just on terms that were different. And I cannot imagine anyone better to speak to, anyone who just brings more joy into my world all around, than you, Jen Gillman. How can people find out more about you?
Well, we have a website, 𝗪𝗔𝗍𝗆𝗔𝗍group.com, but we also have my passion project, the 6 Pillars to Becoming a Happy Rainmaker. You can go on our main website and just click on 6 Pillars, but you can also find it at happyrainmakers.com. And I hope that some of the videos that we've recorded with some happy rainmakers who were trying to give advice might help some unhappy people get a little perspective and get some good ideas.
Life is too short not to be happy. And I've got to say, Jen, you've made today a very happy day for me at the 𝗕𝗫𝗀𝗧𝗏 Cafe. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. This was so much fun.
It was a blast. For those of you who enjoyed this episode, be sure to press the thumbs up button below, leave a positive remark, show us some love. Also, press the bell so you can get notified about future episodes. And above all else, subscribe to this channel. We need you to come back. We want to feel your love, and we want to give you lots of love too. Tell others about this episode and any other episodes you enjoy. And until next time, enjoy coffee at your own 𝗕𝗫𝗀𝗧𝗏 Cafe, always remembering that I want your future to be epic.